Hi, this is Llyn Hunter, Llynhunter, and today I'm going to be starting and finishing off a painting of a Gallimimus. Gallimimus is a bit of an odd critter. It's a dinosaur from the late Jurassic. It was about 20 meters long. You can tell here I've had to fit the image of the Gallimimus or Gallimimus. I'm not real good at the Latin terms for my dinosaurs. Into a G. So what I've done, you can tell, I've truncated the body. I've taken the body out, and I'm just doing the head. And this is like an adult and a baby Gallimimus. And what I'm using today, let's see here. It's upside down here, so you can do the flat. It's a Canson watercolor block. The brand is Montval, Montval. I'll put it down in the information down below. I like to work on watercolor blocks because I don't like to tape things down. I will occasionally show you how to tape down paper. But when you've got watercolor paper that you don't want to buckle, if you use a watercolor pad, the edges are all glued down, and then there's a little, like right in the corner here, there's a little place where you can stick a knife underneath and peel it up. So it's like a pad. And when I'm doing a small piece like this, I like to use a pad. This is 3 by 3 inches square, so you have an idea of the size here. And now right now I'm using a Cotman. This is a travel kit, and I'm using it because it's easier to do on camera. When I've got something this small, it's easier for me to show you what I'm doing. Now, I haven't cleaned off the palette here yet, because what I like to do a lot of the times is I have leftovers from the last painting in my palette, and sometimes I'll use the colors from that painting as accents for whatever I'm doing there here. I don't clean my colors too, for kind of the same reason. If I find out, like this yellow that I'm currently putting water into right now, it's got a little bit of green in it. I use some blue in there and what have you. And then if there's too much of the blue in there, I'll take my paper towel and I'll just take it and kind of wipe it out a bit. I don't like using pure color, primarily because usually you're going to mix up color anyways with watercolor. So I don't worry too much about the paint getting too dirty. Now, if you're wanting a real yellow, what I would do is get a tube and squeeze a little bit out to get a totally clean yellow. But what I'm going to do here is our Gallimimus. I'm going to do him a little bit to the yellow side. So I'm thinking that Gallimimus was a bird-like animal. The word Gallimimus, or I think it's Gallimimus. The Galliformes, that group of creature, is actually the term for chickens and pheasants and chicken-like birds. Peacocks are in the Galliformes family. If you look up online what Galliformes is, they're chicken-like birds. And for some reason, this particular dinosaur, when it was found, was called a chicken-like dinosaur. It's actually, it's one of those things where today the people who are big in dinosaurs, I'm going to start with, you see, I took some yellow. Excuse me for changing the subject here. But I took some yellow, and there was some red, some Indian red on the palette already. And I'm liking kind of this a yellowy ochreish brown. Now, this is actual yellow ochre right here. But I started out, I was trying to think, I wanted to do the Gallimimus a little to the yellow side. I'm thinking more mammal than I am bird in this sometimes, because you would think, if you look at, like, say, ostriches, ostriches are black and white, and they live in a desert environment, and they herd. So so if you were saying big chicken dinosaur that herds, you might want to say, well, might it be black and white or brown and white? The females are kind of a gray, brown, and white, and the males are black and white, and they're primarily black during breeding season too. So what color would the dinosaurs be? This is one of the problems that people have been having for quite a while, is determining, relative to, we have no idea what their lives were like, what they ate, but we can guess by relating them to animals that exist currently, and we can figure out things by the types of terrain they might have lived in, by determining, okay, what was the climate like when they were living. And the late Cretaceous was basically, it wasn't really dry, it wasn't really wet, it was kind of temperate. So the thing is that they might live in a plain-like environment if they were herding, because they looked like they were very, like they could run. They have very long legs. Like I said, they're very similar to an ostrich almost in shape, except for the long beak. They were thought to be omnivores. That's more or less what ostriches are as well. Ostriches will eat lizards and snakes and other things, and they will also eat vegetable matter. They eat just about, anything their little ostriches can get their hands on. Not that they have hands. The Gallimimus did have hands. They had three-fingered, actually relatively long arms that they could actually use. So they might grab vegetation and eat it and pull it down. There were big ferns during the time that they lived, so they might eat something like that. There's a wide variety of possibilities of what these creatures could have been like. Also, again, we don't know what color they were. So it's like whenever I'm doing these dinosaurs, I think they were they were going to be more colorful than, we used to do dinosaurs all in green. And I think that there were a variety of colors. Look at reptiles, but also look at birds. I mean, one of the things that we've more or less determined since the past several, like the past 20 years or so, that we've determined that dinosaurs and birds are most closely related. So it's like when you have, I always like to say, when I'm eating chicken for or I'm having eggs for breakfast, I'm eating dinosaur embryos, because the dinosaurs didn't go extinct. They just changed. They changed in size. So it's like when you see a bird outside flying, or you eat your chicken for dinner, just remember those are relatives of the dinosaurs. So they didn't totally go extinct. The ones that survived just happened to be smaller or larger, if you think, or about the same size if you're thinking about an ostrich. And these are just more or less not direct relatives, but that's where the dinosaurs evolved, and that's where the dinosaurs went. So there are definitely thoughts nowadays that Gallimimus had feathers. So it would have had like fur-like feathers over its body, and then its wing or its arms might have had feathers coming out of it. We don't know, because again, the only things that we have remaining are the bones from or the calcified, or no, they're not calcified. They're the stone fossilized bones, primarily from Mongolia, is where they found all the Gallimimus skeletons, and they found complete intact skeletons. So if anybody who's a young Earth creationist, these guys lived up to between 100 to 60 million years ago. So They're part of the group that shows that, yeah, Earth is pretty old. Okay, now what I'm doing right now, I'm talking all about dinosaurs, not talking about painting. I'm using a Prussian blue, and what I did was I did a light coloring, and then I'm stippling the background a bit to give it some texture. Because when you look up at a blue sky, I mean, sometimes you'll have like a robin eggs blue sky, but it's not always just straight blue. And I wanted to give a little bit of color to that. Now I think I'm gonna give, this is kind of I'm thinking like a sandstone background, so I'm gonna give a little bit of I'm gonna throw in a little bit of green into some, this is like a little bit of orange there. And so what that'll do is the little bit of yellow red, you can tell it will dull down my green a bit, so it'll make it more of a yellowy kind of, to give it a almost foliage in the background type look. Grasses hadn't quite come into existence at this time, I believe. You still had kind of horsehead type vegetation. I really would like to read up more on the vegetation of the various periods and what type of plants they had for each period. Whenever I do dinosaurs, I'm kind of lacking in my knowledge of what to give the correct background for which dinosaurs, because I'm not as familiar with the plants and animals that go together in particular times. We don't have the mammal, any kind of, I don't think we've got any kind of mammals emerging in the late Cretaceous. We might have mammal-like dinosaurs. There are some of those types of things going on. And I think that the little rodentia type mammals are just starting to come about around this time. But you can see right now, I'm using that green. I'm stippling it in the background. You can tell I'm getting more of a landscape feel, and just this very small area. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit. And when you're doing watercolor, what it's really good to do is let certain areas dry. It's like that area right, you can see up here with the blue. This is still a little wet. Where it's darker, that means it hasn't quite dried yet. So whenever you're doing a watercolor, even a little one, it's good to move around the painting and do different pieces and let them dry, and then I'm going to make that eye red and give it I've got this nice Indian brown right here, so I'm going to give this eye, I'm just going to give it a little red. Now what'll happen is that I'm going to lay down that as my first layer, and then I'm going to let that dry for a bit. And while that's drying, I'm going to go in, and I think I'm going to play with these stripes that I've got on it. And I don't want them to go too red, but I'm thinking I want these stripes to be like a little red-brown. So like if it were, I'm thinking zebra. Now, mind you, like ostriches have solid colors. But I was just thinking, you know, if this particular type of bird was a herding, or this type of lizard or reptile or dinosaur, it's like, okay, it's like the dinosaur people are going to kick me in the butt for saying lizard, because they're not really lizards. They're more like birds than lizards. And they're not really ancient reptiles. They're kind of in a group all their own because of their circulatory systems were not like reptiles as much as they are like birds. Again, the reason why we've started classifying them with the birds, or the birds with the dinosaurs, because of their circulatory systems were more similar to that of birds than they are to reptiles. Even though a lot of dinosaurs have reptilian qualities to them. And you know, how many birds have teeth? And most dinosaurs had some kind of teeth. So it's an interesting, the evolution of life on this planet is a very interesting one, considering the planet had dinosaurs for longer than it had, per se, birds or humans. I mean, we're really late to the game. I think the insects have been here the longest. Well, that's not true either. When you're thinking about animal life, we can get to the invertebrates and what have you, but the dinosaurs were around for quite some time, and we haven't even come close to their period on the planet. Now, you can tell too, it's like this particular brush is a Winsor Newton. This is I believe a 0. The thing is that the tip, this is a very old brush. This brush is probably at least 10 to 15 years old. You literally, if you want a brush that'll last you for frickin' ever, Winsor Newton Series 7 are the best you can buy. They get a little pricey, but even when they lose hairs, they're so controllable and so wonderful. I'm always pushing Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes because I've used them my entire life, and they are just wonderful for anything you're going to use the wet stuff with. The only problem is that if you use acrylic mediums, they will die after a while, just because acrylic's really hard on brushes. It's one of the reasons why you use brushes that are specifically designed for acrylic paint, usually for that paint, because they're usually made out of nylon or a synthetic nylon type of fiber that can handle the way that acrylic will dry and abuse your brush. I will use my sable brushes occasionally with acrylic, just because I have yet to find a full-on synthetic brush that can control water as well as what a mink can, because technically that's what sable is. It's mink fur, and there's something in that oil that's in mink fur that is just delightful. Now, as you can see, I keep on going into this red, and I'm laying down a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more to give texture and to increase the color, because every time you lay down a little bit more paint, it'll get a little darker. And with watercolor, you always want to go from light to dark and just keep on building up and building up and building up. And it's like, you can see I'm bouncing all over the painting as I do this, and I'm keeping these guys like that yellow and brown stripe. I'm going to go into that one, the baby's eye, give it a little bit of red, and I'm trying to keep the highlight white. I'm not trying not to paint that highlight, to keep that reflection area and that highlight there. This one I overpainted a little. What I'll do with that is, when the painting is all done, I will go back in with ballpoint pen. I will heavy up the line. This particular piece, the ink work is done in ballpoint. There's a video before this. I will link it in the bottom that you can go to on the drawing of this piece. And basically it's drawn in ballpoint pen, because ballpoint pen makes a good resist watercolor. And I will do the initial drawing in pencil, go in with ballpoint pen afterwards for my inking. We'll do this painting, and when this painting totally dries, I will go back over the whole thing in ballpoint pen one more time to heavy up the lines where the pigment has occluded the drawing, and where I want to accent things. And then I will also, if I've made any mistakes, you can tell I made mistakes in here a little bit. There's a little bit of paper foxing that you can see. I've got to go back over that with an eraser. But what happened was I drew it incorrectly. And I went back in with an X-Acto knife blade and carefully scraped it out and took an eraser to it. So don't let anybody ever tell you that you can't correct traditional ink or India ink, or that you can't correct paint. Once you lay it down, there's no way of correcting it. You can go back in and scrape it out with a X-Acto knife blade or a razor blade, and carefully erase it with with kneaded eraser and plastic eraser, and get it down to where anybody viewing it but you won't even know that you made a mistake. It's just learning how to, and I've shown in other videos how to fix those mistakes. They're not that difficult. Once you do it a couple of times, it's scary the first couple of times you do it, but once you get used to doing it. Now, what I'm doing here, and excuse me for changing the subject once again, but I'm laying in a little bit of blue for the shadow. I've got enough detail going on, and what I'm doing it now is I'm laying in some of the Prussian blue that I used for the sky. I'm using in the shadow, and that does two things. Number one, shadows using color rather than black usually are much richer. I'm not one of those people who say don't use black. Black is a color. It's totally legitimate. It mixes with other colors to make even new colors, especially when you're working in watercolor. You can get some very interesting colors by using a color and black, like purple and black is a nice variety. But I like to get my shadows from blues, adding blue and adding purple. You can see how nicely, as I'm putting this in, that that Prussian blue is taking this to shadow now. So I'm trying to get, this is a core shadow right here where I'm stippling it in. I'm letting the colors blend a bit, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. And like I said, what'll happen is because I'm using blue, it harmonizes a bit with that sky. So whenever you're painting, if you throw, I might throw a little bit of red into the sky before I'm done, just to get, an overall harmonizing feeling within the painting. And this is going to be, like I said, this is going to be a for a dinosaur alphabet book. And it's like, well, what little 4-year-old or 2-year-old is going to care about you're harmonizing the colors? I'm a real big one for I cared. I looked at beautiful paintings when I was a kid. Beautiful illustrations definitely inspired me when I was 2 and 3 years old. Don't put it past any child that they're not seeing beauty in ways that you don't imagine them to see it, because they will. You can see now I'm using the blue to do a little bit of stippling and texturing here on its body. And I think I want to put a little bit of a core right on the edge here. There we go. And this is also, when you're doing a small piece like this, like I said, this is 3 by 3 inches is what the G fits into. And when you keep your pieces small, you can experiment more, you can make more mistakes, you can play with fixing mistakes. If everything goes completely wrong, you haven't spent a lot of time working on a painting, and you can get a lot of learning and interest out of just doing small paintings like this. This is my way of escaping. I work as a storyboard artist for animation. I've been doing some really tough deadlines lately, which is why I haven't been posting as often, and I've got to get back to that because I really enjoy. This is going to my my niece, Penelope. I'm doing this dinosaur ABC for her, and then eventually I'll probably post the finals on I'm trying to one of the photo sites, so that I could possibly make money off of it. You never know nowadays. There's so much stuff out there that you can get free off the internet. I mean, that's what this video is I'm hoping that you get something out of watching me paint and me talk about the dinosaurs and looking at the watercolor while I'm painting to help you do what I'm doing. I really enjoy doing this. I really appreciate you being there. Now, okay, the background here, we've got these hills that are kind of flat, and I'm gonna throw a little bit of blue and some more brown into these to just to pull out, give some depth, because the hills are really flat here. So I'm gonna just throw a little bit of extra blue to make the plants look like they're a little bit more like plants, and pop them out a little bit more. Let's see here. What else do I want to? I think we're just about done here. I want to put to get an eye to pop a little more. Wherever the highlight is, you want to darken it. You want to put the dark around where the highlight is, and then you want to get it lighter back here. So it's like the light is going through the eyeball. So even though it's light back there right now, what I'm going to do, I'm taking a little, I'm taking all the paint out of my brush. I'm wiping it on my paper towel. I'm going to pick up the paint that is right here on the back side of that eye. Scrub it. I'm scrubbing the paint out. So it's like if the paint were on your palette. I want to clean that paint away, and then I've emptied the water from my brush by scraping it across the paper towel, and then I'm going to take the dry brush. It's going to act like a sponge, and you can see it's picking up the paint that was in there. And so the thing is that now that this is light back here and this is dark here, and that highlight is right there, you get more of a feeling like it's a marble. I'll put a little bit more paint here. There. And that's how, now it has that feeling of like the light is going through it. And it gives it more dimension. And I think we're done here for today. Thank you for stopping by. My name is Llyn Hunter, Llynhunter. I have a Patreon if you'd like to join me. I try to post things almost daily on my Patreon. I've worked in tabletop games. I've worked in animation for 32 years. And I hope this gave you some pleasure, and I hope you go out and do some watercolor painting yourself. Thanks for stopping by. Really appreciate your being here.